Within Auschwitz concentration camp, there were three main areas inside of the complex. The first was known as Auschwitz I, the main labour camp element. The second was known as Auschwitz-Birkenau, which became the main extermination centre, and the third, sometimes forgotten element, was known as Monowitz, the part of Auschwitz in which prisoners were forced to work for the German company IG Farben as slaves. When the Red Army liberated Auschwitz, they discovered a huge network of camps, and many of the prisoners who were found had just been left for dead, with no supplies. Dead bodies lined the camp, but the sheer size of Auschwitz shocked the liberators. Today we look at one man who is considered the forgotten commandant of Auschwitz, the man whose job it was to oversee the whole of Auschwitz II Monowitz. So join us today as we look at the vengeful execution of Heinrich Schwarz, the forgotten commandant of Auschwitz. And remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Heinrich Schwartz was born on June 14, 1906, in Munich, the city which Hitler would later attempt to seize control of. Munich in a sense was the heart of the Nazi Party during the early days, and after school Schwartz entered a job as a book printer. He had completed an apprenticeship and entered work in this profession. However, as the Nazis gained traction across Munich, he joined the party officially and the SS at the end of November 1931. Already these two groups had gained much support across Bavaria and the States, even in the years before Hitler became Chancellor. Since he had been locked up following the Beer Hall Putsch, Hitler had published Mein Kampf, and at the time had become an incredibly popular politician and celebrity across Germany, with his failed coup transporting Adolf Hitler into the mindset of those across the world, not just in Germany. Now, as Hitler took control of Germany in January 1933, he gripped his police state across the nation, and many did suffer within the country. For example, the Jews and other minorities suffered greatly in the early years, with their persecution beginning as soon as the Nazis seized control. It began with Jews being caricatured in newspapers such as Der Stürmer, and with them being banned from sitting on park benches as Aryans, and Jews were even banned from owning pets at one time and using the telephone. However, within the years following and during the Second World War, the persecution was ramped up, which eventually resulted in the Holocaust and the mass deportation of Jews to concentration camps. It was within this environment that Heinrich Schwartz thrived. Now, as the Second World War broke out, he was based on the Western Front with the Waffen-SS during the early part of the conflict. He served initially with the group until October 1940, and he was then transferred across to the Inspectorate of the SS concentration camps. This department of the SS was the ultimate authority that managed the concentration camps within the whole of the Third Reich. At the time that Schwartz joined, many of the camps that would become synonymous with the brutality of the Holocaust were not yet built or operational, and this department was classed with establishing and regulating the camps. The CCI, as they were known, arranged for what life inside the camps would be like, and they even set guidelines for the punishment of those prisoners who violated their rules. For example, they advocated the use of flogging, interrogation and torture using methods such as a tree, where prisoners were suspended in the air for a large amount of time in public. The CCI even oversaw the different staff inside of the camp, such as the doctors, maintenance departments, and even political elements of the camp, for example the police force or the administration. Initially, after completing work for the CCI, Schwartz was based at Mauthausen and Sachsenhausen concentration camps, and was involved in the leadership element of these camps between 1940 and 1941. He was employed in the SS main office for household and buildings, and then ended up back at the SS team based at Mauthausen. It was clear that during his time here, he was a man who could follow orders and was dependable, and was a key valued member of the SS. Usually those members of the SS who were trustworthy and could carry out orders without any questions were gifted with promotions, and that is what happened to Schwartz. During September of 1941, Heinrich Schwartz was sent to Auschwitz concentration camp and was based in the administration offices of the complex. It had been established by the Nazis in 1940 and still at the time was in its infancy. Shortly after he joined the camp, Auschwitz expanded at a growing rate, with Auschwitz II Birkenau being created, and this was where the main extermination element of the camp took place, and where the gas chambers were initially established. Initially at the camp, Heinrich Schwartz worked as an adjutant and assistant to infamous camp commandant Rudolf Höss, and he then served as a director of the camp's work assignment department becoming a Lagerführer for the main Auschwitz administration part. It was clear that he was valued by his superiors inside Auschwitz and was promoted within the SS a number of times. In March 1943 he reported to the SS Economic and Administrative Main Office and spoke about a selection of a transport that recently arrived. He said how if the transports from Berlin continue, with so many men and women, rolling up children next to old Jews, he didn't expect much in terms of commitment. He said he needed stronger figures, referring to the need for more stronger slave labourers. After Rudolf Höss left Auschwitz, the camp system was divided into 3 categories: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, and Auschwitz III Monowitz. Schwartz then became commandant and was given control of Auschwitz III Monowitz in December 1943. Monowitz had been established from October 1942, and it was created for IG Farben, and slave labour was used in the industrial complex within the area. Also, Krupp had built a factory nearby, and Monowitz held around 12,000 prisoners, with the majority being Jews. Now, in terms of the working day, it was long gruelling work that the prisoners had to endure. However, the SS charged IG Farben 3 Reichsmarks a day for unskilled workers and more for skilled workers. Children were even forced to work there, costing only 1 Reichsmark a day. As was normal at Auschwitz, the barracks were usually overcrowded, and productivity wasn't always as the SS expected. Usually the prisoners worked slower than the German construction workers, as they'd been given poor food rations and were regularly beaten. This led to Heinrich Schwarz demanding more SS men to police the prisoners and workers. To improve productivity, IG Farben even considered incentivising the prisoners, allowing them to wear watches, break some of the guidelines such as growing longer hair, and to receive cigarettes. Of course, also many of the workers who suffered and were not as productive as others were treated awfully, and eventually sent to the gas chambers of Auschwitz-Birkenau to be murdered. Many other prisoners died inside the hospital of Monowitz, suffering from exhaustion, and others were hanged at the camp as a sign of the Nazis' power. Others were also shot in the construction site if they struggled or refused to work. It was Heinrich Schwartz overall who was in charge of the camp as the commandant. He also organised slave labourers to go and work at other companies, and under his leadership thousands of prisoners were killed in the various methods. It was estimated that under his leadership between 10,000 and 35,000 prisoners were killed from slave labour inside the camp, and under Schwarz's reign of terror over Monowitz. Schwartz remained at Auschwitz for a number of years before he became the overall commandant of the Natzweiler concentration camp. He was even allegedly considered to take over the Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp and the other facilities in the Mittelwerk area, which were involved in creating different V-weapons, vengeance weapons, that Hitler believed could be used to win the war, showing how well thought of he was. Whilst at Natzweiler, as the Second World War was coming to an end, Heinrich Schwartz was captured by the advancing Allied forces. Following the capture of Natzweiler, a number of different trials went ahead. However, Schwartz was kept separate from these due to his high rank. He was transferred to Rastatt and was tried in connection with the atrocities committed as the Commandant of Natzweiler, but he wasn't really placed on trial for his crimes of Monowitz. As he had committed many war crimes in his short stint at Natzweiler, he was sentenced to death and was to be executed using a firing squad. On the 20th of March 1947, Heinrich Schwartz was taken out of the prison where he was being held near to Baden-Baden and was transported by Allied forces to a forest. He was led out of the transport into a clearing in the Sandweier district, and he was met by a firing squad who were there to bring about his death. He was led opposite the soldiers, blindfolded, and then for his crimes of the Holocaust was shot dead and executed. His death was incredibly quick, although taking place almost 2 years after the Second World War had come to an end. The speed of his death did not correspond with the suffering he inflicted inside Auschwitz and the other camps he worked at. He was even described by one Auschwitz survivor as moody and unpredictable, and was much feared by the prisoners and the SS. He had a many great prisoner on his conscience, and Schwartz was one of the worst concentration camp leaders ever. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.